Hi, my name is Garrett. It's Thursday, February 5th, 2026, and the market is down a 1.3% today. And generally, the word on the internet is that it's over fear of AI basically replacing the internet, um, AI replacing software and things like that. So we can look at Apple and things like that. Um, It's down, you know, not much, but a fifth of a percent on the day, and it did have a huge drop at the beginning of the day at market open, as did pretty much everything else today. So I wanna, just talk about the the current situation and about the state of where AI and everything like that is, just so that, I can kinda get this off my chest because I think, every once in a while, there's just, like, something that comes up, and I really wanna talk about it. So this is the probably second or third time that this has happened, and, you're gonna hear it today. So, yeah, tech is in crisis. From my perspective as a computer science student, also studying fintech, this is what I think. What's really happening and how this affects pretty much everybody. Um, to start, the big, you know, elephant in the room is vibe coding. I kind of think vibe coding is a dumb way to name something. Like, I don't really like vibe coding, but generally people are using LLMs to supplement or really just completely replace their software engineering. And so um what does this do and what implications does this have? Um so before we understand, how vibe coding affects the value of companies, well, I want to start with what actually makes software companies valuable. So the first, network effects. Obviously, if I'm using it, it makes it more valuable for you using it. One prime example would be Facebook. Um, Probably Meta's biggest product, is valuable because your friends and family are on there. Maybe most people don't use Facebook anymore. Maybe Instagram's a more apt example, but the point stays the same. Like, it's more valuable because other people use it. There's tons of examples on this across like industries, across different types of software. It's not just in social media, but that's the easiest way to explain it is with social media. So then on top of that, economies of scale. Things get cheaper as you do more of them, you get better at the software gets cheaper the larger the software is. So you get more efficient algorithm or I s yeah, algorithmically you get more efficient and you gain more resources. Resources become cheaper for you. Starting off, a lot of businesses use services for their infrastructure, and then later on as they grow they transition to their own infrastructure, which is more expensive up front but cheaper in the long run because they're the ones owning and maintaining it, especially with larger infrastructure projects. So another thing that kind of plays into that is the ownership of compute. It's cheaper for Google to index and search the web than it is for me to index and search the web because Google has the hardware and has the compute to do it, and it's built specifically for that purpose. And it's also owned by them, so there's no margin that they're paying. Um, Maybe if they were paying AWS for their compute, it would be more expensive because they have to pay AWS's margins. Because they don't have to do that, it makes it cheaper for them to do things. Standardization. Uh, there's a reason that Google Docs looks exactly like Microsoft Word, and it's really just because that's what people are comfortable with. Um, Microsoft Word being the industry standard for decades, and then Google Docs wanting to come in and beat the incumbent. It's possible. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult, especially because somebody like Microsoft Word is standard. Everybody's very comfortable with it. There's institutional knowledge within huge companies that makes it so that it's pretty hard to knock Microsoft Word off of its throne. That's pretty much shown in the way that, despite in some situations being behind in feature set, like collaboration in the past, which has been kind of fixed, um, Microsoft Word was still used widely and pretty much the dominant player in enterprise word processing software. So the next is institutional trust and reliability. That kind of touches with standardization. So if I'm at a big company, I trust Microsoft Word more than I trust, I don't know, Joe's word processor, right? So it's just there's a long-standing relationship, even if it's not direct, between the companies and the software providers, and people are just more comfortable with things. So it makes it so that there's more reason to go with Microsoft Word over some other random word processor. So next, organizational knowledge. We also touched on this earlier, but um, big companies are very slow, and it makes it so that there's softwares that are kind of entrenched in the way that they work, and it makes it very difficult for them to change. People know how to use Microsoft Word. People know how to use Slack. If so, I came in with my Slack alternative. Somebody might not know how to change their profile picture or how to make an announcement that addresses everybody or anything like that, where um, there's a basic understanding that everybody has because they've used Slack. They learned it at some point, but now there's no real reason to learn it again. Branding, um, obviously, again, back to the Microsoft Word example, uh, you would rather use Microsoft over, I don't know, Joe, right? Because Joe, you don't know who Joe is, but you know who Microsoft is, and Microsoft has been around for a really long time, and it makes it so that it's just more trustworthy. Nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM, kind of thing. Um, people trust brand. Next is distribution. A big reason Google is super valuable is not because they've indexed the internet, which is true, but it's also that they have all the users. Everybody uses Google, which makes their advertising platform more valuable, which makes Google more valuable. Lastly, and it's kind of a given, but with lots of customers, you're able to distribute costs better. So, like I said earlier, Google indexes the entire internet. It's not necessarily cheap to search across the entire internet. Google's algorithms are pretty efficient, so it's not super expensive, but it's not cheap. It costs them, I don't know, a couple cents, I think, every query, every search query, but it's not free, right? But they're able to subsidize this because they have all of the customers. They're able to use all of these customers, use all of this data to advertise, make their advertisements more valuable, and basically provide their service for free to users. Um, if I decided to take on the huge project of indexing the entire internet and being able to search it, I would not have those same luxuries. I'd probably have to pay a lot of money, more even than Google would have to pay without their advertising business, just because a they've made it as efficient as basically as efficient as scientifically possible, mathematically possible, but they've also got enough users to basically provide that service for free. So why would I, as a user, want to build a project or something like that, other than to learn, obviously? Why would I want to build a project that would index the entire internet, cost a ton of money to store all that data, and cost a ton of money to run all those servers, just to be able to search the internet when I could do it for free? So, so what are some of the companies that lost valuation in this panic that I don't really think should have? First is Google. Google Search is a great example where they had they've indexed the entire internet, making it basically that's a pretty much impossible feat for somebody, and if it was, it'd be very expensive. They're able to query all that data in milliseconds, and if I were to write an algorithm to do that, it'd probably either take a ton of computer science theory, and it would not be that quick. Users use Google because it's better, like we said, so it's entrenched in people's minds. That's why Google is valuable, and something like vibe coding isn't going to change that. And lastly, it's free. Like I mentioned earlier, it would be very expensive for me to try to run Google for myself or even for a group of me and my friends. Like, it's just practically impossible to get your costs to the point that Google has and still maintain the margins that they have while providing a free product. Next is Microsoft Word, another example that we went over earlier, basically standardizing for editing documents. I mean, it if you've worked in enterprise or really anywhere, it's everywhere and it's impossible to escape. And everybody knows how to use Microsoft Word. Uh, there's a huge amount of information about it, both within the company and on the internet. Uh, like I said, if I wanted to use, I don't know, Claude to make a text editor, it probably could do it. Realistically, it would probably be able to do it, but it also would not have all of this documentation and all of this um, information, both with people or from people around me, but also from people on the internet and from documentation on the internet about how exactly to use it, how to accomplish certain tasks on Microsoft Word, that kind of thing. Next is live co-working. Despite the existence of peer-to-peer connections, it's all pretty difficult to set up and probably not something that, I don't know, Claude could do, but in the future they might be able to. That's fine. But it's not free. Like, nothing is free, and a lot of these services like Microsoft Word that kind of come free within the enterprise package that your company pays for basically make it so that it only really makes sense for your company to pay for that. It wouldn't make any sense for your company to have its own server for supporting live co-working with other people at your job, because Microsoft does it and it's cheaper because they've done it at the scale that they have. Next is obviously the reliability and trust of Microsoft Word. You can always trust that Microsoft Word is going to do what you expect it to do in general. Recently, it hasn't. There have been some things on Microsoft's um, releases with different products that have made it less reliable, but in general, Microsoft Word is Microsoft Word. You've got the core product and you know what to expect. And lastly, it's fully featured. Basically every feature you can expect in a modern word processor is built into Microsoft Word. If you were going to ask an LLM to build some sort of Microsoft Word clone, it would not be fully featured in the way that Microsoft Word is. Not just with something like working with other people live, but also, all the different types of styling and formatting options. And there's just so infinitely many options in Microsoft products that basically make it impossible for you to do that in a one-shot prompt kind of thing. So there's so much value there, and it basically makes it impossible. And lastly is the Microsoft support teams. They're there to help people, right? And they understand the product inside and out. If you had an LLM build a product like this, you could probably ask it, right? You could probably ask it questions about how to do one thing or the other. And even if that feature was built in, which is not a given, it's also possible that it just completely hallucinates on how to use that feature. So it's not really a given, and it's not necessarily its own built-in support team. So these companies have great support teams that are literally trained in doing this. So that's where their value lies, and it's a great business. Next and lastly is Slack. Slack is one that I've seen a ton of Slack clones. Slack is realistically not that difficult to build yourself, minus APIs and building bots and things like that, like being able to build bots and things for servers. Like, all of that is pretty complex, but building Slack itself, pretty basic. But the thing is that people use Slack, which makes it super valuable. Similar to Meta products, people use Slack for all tons of different types of reasons, and it makes the product valuable. People know how to use Slack. It's another instance where the support team really matters. They make most of their money off of enterprise customers, so they know what to do when a user is trying to do one thing or trying to change something or doesn't understand something or wants something built in, anything like that. Like, these people are trained for this, and no matter how great the LLM is, at least at this point, there's no replacing that. People also don't just use Slack for work. Like, there are podcast communities. It's a basic social network. There are I see people in class all the time talking on Slack, like DMing on Slack. People use Slack for DMs and things like that. It's a basic social network, and despite what people might think, it is a pretty cool network. The way the Discord is a cool network, there's pretty there's big nodes with huge servers and then smaller nodes with small servers, and they're all interconnected. It's really cool, actually. So what are the real effects and who are the real losers in a situation where vibe coding becomes more mainstream and people are using vibe coding services and, prompt to app services to build apps uh, that can be basically used for free by the users. So here's the software that should really devalue fitness trackers and to-do lists, unspecialized productivity apps. I think something like Notion is very useful and will never be devalued by directly, at least by something like this, just because they're so entrenched in how it's a workflow. So people use it and it's pretty much impossible to dethrone that. But there's a lot of basic programming projects that people do when they're first getting into web development or first getting into app development. So if you look at the App Store and you look at to-do lists, there's a million to-do lists with 3 downloads or 3 reviews because all these people have made their own to-do list, and because it was something that they made, they wanted to share it with the public. That's all cool, but that also means that there's a billion of them. I don't really think that this situation changes that situation that much, other than the fact that the people that are losing money here are the people that are making $50,000 a year selling, you know, um, ad-free versions of their apps or, premium for their app so that users don't have to see ads or get better features or anything like that. Because realistically, a fitness tracker, you might get a better result from an LLM. Maybe the UI isn't great, but a lot of these apps don't have great UIs either. It's all a lot of preference, and you can specialize whatever your app is and tailor it to your preferences, which does make LLMs pretty useful for something like this, especially something where there's tons of examples, and that makes it very easy for them to have great understanding of what you want and what needs to be done to carry out something like one of these apps. So on top of this, what are the follow-up effects in the entire software space? Uh, this is from my perspective as a college student studying computer science. So um, there's an ever-growing number of computer science students. I will throw a graph somewhere here, but there are actually more computer science students enrolled in 23, 24 than there were the year before. So even with the huge number of, I guess, the huge amount of AI fear and things like that, there's still tons of people enrolling in this. Um, Whether that's entrenched from the whole learn to code movement, or maybe tons of people are just interested in how computers work. Those two things are not mutually exclusive either. Like maybe somebody thinks that it's a great way to make a ton of money, and it's also a great way to have a pretty cushy life, and also able to do something cool because everybody likes computers, right? So that's possible, but it's also not completely possible. There's just less and less opportunity in software. So there are more and more students, but then there's less and less opportunity. Whether or not that's a temporary thing, I guess, is to be known. We don't really know yet, but it's possible that um, people actually do cut back on the number of engineers that they employ. It's possible that the number of software companies grows, and it doesn't really matter because even if you're employing less people, there are more software companies to go around and more people to go to those different software companies. So lastly, software engineers are going to need to get more specialized. So like, I really enjoy working on database systems and getting an understanding of different types of databases, um, and really understanding how efficient backends work, understanding how recommendation and search algorithms work, because really, I think serving people the right content and understanding what content they're actually looking for is super interesting. Um, and so I think that a lot of people are going to have to do that. I think a lot of people are going to have to get an understanding of really specific things, really specific fields within software so that they can land a job, because the breadth over depth is not going to cut it anymore, I don't think. I just don't foresee that being a possibility because that breadth over depth is kind of being replaced by AI and LLMs. So, at first, there were not enough people studying computer science and studying software and things like that. So, there's a huge learn to code movement. So, all these people rushed into the field, and there um, was an overcorrection because there was the whole learn to code movement and all these things basically promising a better life for people. And that was an overcorrection. The supply went up way more than the demand could handle, and that kind of put us where we are now. So then, because of that, and because companies were over hiring at that point, they corrected downwards. When they corrected downwards, there was another overcorrection. The last overcorrection, uh, back downwards. So there's the overcorrection with companies hiring, an overcorrection for people learning to code and moving into the space, and now there's another overcorrection back downwards. Uh, Whether or not there's, a return to the mean here, or even if there's another overcorrection, I don't really foresee another overcorrection happening. I don't think that we're going to see a early 2020s job boom like we did ever again, really. But there's a pattern and a trend here where uh, software companies have tons of money. They make tons of money because they have huge margins generally, and so they're able to pay these salaries. In general, salaries are declining, and companies are moving to cities where the labor is cheaper. It's possible that there's another overcorrection because these companies do make tons of money. Um, like I said, when Amazon, right? Amazon overhired, but they could afford it really because they were making tons of money. But they're making more money now and actively laying people off. So if that's all the case, it all just adds up to the possibility that this is temporary. The markets are not great right now. The markets might be reacting to AI news, but it's also just possible that there's a pullback, there's a drawdown to the fact that there's been a super high valuation for pretty much every tech company over the last couple months or 2 years or 3 years maybe at this point. But there's there's a shift happening, and it's possible that's not great. It's possible that it's a quick correction like it has been the last couple times. I don't really think that there's any reason to worry too much yet. The markets are only down a couple percent over the last couple days, and we're gonna have to see how things move going forward. But so yeah, that's the end of my slideshow. Maybe I'll do this more often if more people like this. The last one got, a couple hundred views, which is not bad, but not amazing. Um, if you're interested in something like this, I also talked about AI there, but it was more about AI in the uh, interview space. That was when I was really freaking out about getting a job internship. Um, and I'm less stressed about that now. So go look at that because I think it's pretty interesting and I think it really applies now. So go check that out, and thank you for watching. Bye.